Welcome back, everybody. Last week we talked about defining a project, including project scope, project priorities, creating the work breakdown structure, creating a responsibility matrix, and developing a communication plan. In today's lecture, we'll be discussing why estimating is important, factors influencing estimations, and different methods used to determine time and costs. We are now at Chapter 5, Estimating Project Times and Cost. The first thing we need to do is establish a working definition of estimate. Estimating is the process of determining how much time and money it will take to complete a project deliverable. This involves balancing expectations of stakeholders and the need for control while the project is implemented. The process used for estimating differs from organization to organization and sometimes from project to project. Today we'll talk about top-down estimates, also known as macro estimates, and bottom-up estimates, also known as micro estimates. The top-down approaches involve analogy, group census, or mathematical relationships. For bottom-up, the approaches involve estimates of elements of the work breakdown structure. In some respect, the vast majority of projects will overrun or overspend to some degree, largely because the project manager was over-optimistic in their estimates as to how long it would take or cost. So is estimating important? Estimating time and cost are important to support good decisions, schedule work, determine how long the project should take and its cost, determine whether the project is worth doing, develop cash flow needs, determine how well the project is progressing, and develop time-phase budgets and establish the project baseline. Past experience is a good starting point for developing time and cost estimates, but they must be further refined for the current project. The following factors will have a strong influence on the accuracy of estimates. The planning horizon refers to how accurate an estimate can be. Events that are occurring now or in the next couple days can be estimated to almost 100% accuracy, while events occurring 5 years from now are likely to be educated guesses. The accuracy of time and cost estimates should improve as you move from the planning stage to the point where individual work packages are defined. We talked about work packages in Chapter 4. These are the smallest identifiable work activities in a project. The project duration is the amount of time it takes to complete a project. Long duration projects increase the uncertainty of estimates. The price of technology may decrease over time. However, labor, equipment, and operations are likely to increase over the same period. But at what rate? How can these be accurately estimated? We'll take a look at that answer later in the lecture. The people factor can influence the quality of time and cost estimates. For example, accuracy of estimates depends on the skills of the people making the estimates. A close match of skills to the task will influence productivity and learning time, and conversely, the opposite is also true. Staff turnover and whether people have worked on projects together in the past also influences accurate estimating. The project structure chosen to manage the project will influence time and cost estimates. The speed advantage of a focused team comes at a higher cost than a matrix team. However, the matrix team will not deliver as quickly due to competing demands and divided focus. When asked to estimate, most people are inclined to pad estimates in order to increase the probability of being on budget and reducing the risk of being late. If everyone at all levels of the project adds a little padding to reduce risk, the project duration and costs are seriously overstated. Padding also defeats the chance of truly arriving at realistic estimates, which is greatly needed in order to be competitive. The organization culture can influence the project estimates. As we discussed in Chapter 3, the organization culture is the beliefs, values, and norms of an organization. So padding estimates may be tolerated by one organization, encouraged by another, or be discouraged in yet another. It takes time to properly prepare estimates, and some organizations believe that it takes too much time and is not worth all the effort. Other organizations believe the accurate estimates are crucial to effective project management. Finally, non-project factors can impact time and cost estimates. For example, equipment downtime can alter time estimates. National holidays, vacations, and legal limits can influence project estimates. Project priority can influence resource assignment and impact cost and time. Project estimating is a complex process. The quality of estimates can be improved when the factors we just discussed are considered when making the estimates. Let's move on to talk about estimating guidelines. Managers recognize time, cost, and resource estimates must be accurate if project planning, scheduling, and controlling are to be effective. However, research shows that poor estimates are a major reason for project failure. Even though a project has never been done before, the following guidelines can be used to develop estimates. First, have people familiar with the task make the estimate. They will give an estimate based on experience and best judgment. These people will hopefully buy into the project and its estimates as they implement the work. If other people are consulted instead, it will be difficult to hold those doing the work responsible for not achieving the estimated time. Next, use several people to make the estimates. It is well known that an estimate has a better chance of being realistic when several people with experience or knowledge of the task are used. This is sometimes called crowdsourcing. When estimates are determined, they are based on certain assumptions. Estimates should be based on normal conditions using a normal level of resource. For instance, is a normal workday 8 hours? Are there normally 2 or 3 shifts working? Whatever the normal is for the organization should be used in determining an estimate. Specific time units should be used and should be selected early in the development phase of the project. This might be minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months. Whatever unit is decided, be sure to use it consistently. Treat each task as independent of other tasks that might be included in the work breakdown structure. Do not aggregate time or cost upward. Each task is to have its own values. Do not include allowances for contingencies when making an estimate. Remember, the estimate should assume normal condition, but expect that not all work will materialize as planned. Obviously, some tasks carry more time and cost risks than others. Simply identifying the degree of risk lets stakeholders consider alternative methods and alter process decisions. This helps avoid surprise to the stakeholders. We've just covered guidelines to follow when making estimates. Now, let's take a look at different methods of estimating. An organization may choose to use a top-down or macro method, or they may choose to use the bottom-up or micro method. It's important to understand the differences between the two. Top-down estimates are usually derived by using a group of people who use prior experience and information to determine the estimated duration and cost. However, these estimates are sometimes made by top managers who have little knowledge of the processes needed to complete the project. The fact that the estimate came from the top can influence people responsible to do what it takes to make the estimate. The bottom-up approach pushes the estimating process down to the work package level. This process can take place after the project has been defined in detail. It can serve as a check on cost elements in the work breakdown structure by rolling up the work packages and associated cost accounts to major deliverables. The approach also provides the customer with the opportunity to compare the low-cost, efficient method with any imposed restrictions. This table demonstrates when each approach should be used. You can see that the top-down estimates should occur if the following conditions are met. It involves strategic decision-making, has high uncertainty, is a small internal project, or has an unstable scope. Bottom-up estimates should occur if the following conditions are met. Cost and time are important, you're preparing a fixed cost contract, or the customer wants details. While each approach has its pros and cons, there is an overall preferred approach within the project management area. The first step is to create a rough estimate using the top-down process. Then, develop the work breakdown structure along with the organization breakdown structure. From there, you can make bottom-up estimates and develop schedules and budgets. With this completed, you can reconcile differences between the top-down and bottom-up estimates, thus utilizing the strengths of each approach. Now that we understand what top-down estimating means, let's have a closer look. Here are some common methods of achieving a top-down estimate. Let's take a closer look at each method. The consensus method of the top-down approach involves using the pooled experiences of senior and/or middle managers to provide estimates. This typically involves a meeting where ultimately they reach a decision as to their best guess estimate. It's important to note that these first top-down estimates are only a rough cut and typically occur in the conceptual stage of the project. It is important to not dictate these macro estimates down to lower-level managers, as they might feel compelled to accept the estimate even if they believe it is inaccurate. Top-down methods usually use ratios to estimate project times and costs. The ratio method is often used in the concept or need phase of the project to get an initial duration and cost. An example provided in your book is a house which is 2,700 square feet at a cost of $160 per square foot. Therefore, the cost is approximately $432,000. Based on prior experience, a house of this size normally takes 100 days to complete. The apportion method is an extension to the ratio method. It should be used when projects closely follow past projects in features and costs. With good historical data, estimates can be made quickly with little effort and reasonable accuracy. This method is very common in projects that are relatively standard but have some small variation or customization. Here's an example of the apportion method. You'll notice that each element of the project is assigned a percentage or a portion of the total estimated cost of the project. Assuming the total project cost is estimated to be $500,000, the costs are apportioned as a percentage of the total cost. For this example, you'll see the costs apportioned to the document deliverable are 5% of the total, or $25,000. This is further broken down to the subdeliverables Doc 1 and Doc 2. Doc 1 receives 2% and Doc 2 receives 3%, or $10,000 and $15,000 respectively. The function point method for software and system projects are frequently estimated using weighted variables called function points. These function points are identified as numbers of inputs, numbers of outputs, numbers of inquiries, number of data files, and number of interfaces. The total adjusted count provides the basis for estimating labor, effort, and cost for a project. It may also use factors derived from historical data. Each organization needs to develop its own averages for its specific type of work. While function point metrics are useful, their accuracy depends on adequate historical data and the relevancy of the current project deliverables when lined up with the past project averages. Here's an example of a form an organization might use to determine its function points. The organization will take the number of inputs and value it as either low, average, or high. Then multiply the number of inputs by the value associated with the weighting. This gives them their function point for that particular element. Here's a completed function point form using the formula we just discussed on the last slide. You can see the number of inputs here is 15 and its rated complexity is low. Therefore, they multiplied 15 by 2 for a total of 30. They then continued to do the same thing for the remaining elements, ending with adding the totals up to provide an overall total. The overall total is used in association with the historical data to determine cost and time estimates. Some projects require that the same task be repeated several times. The time to perform a task improves with repetition. This is especially true of tasks that are labor-intensive. When this occurs, you can predict the reduction in time to perform the task. This pattern has been quantified in the learning curve, which is described by the following relationship. Each time the output quantity doubles, the unit labor hours are reduced at a constant rate. We've just spent a good amount of time talking about the different methods involved in top-down estimating. Now, let's turn our attention to the bottom-up approach to estimating. Here's a list of the most common and the ones we'll be discussing in more detail here. One bottom-up approach would be to use the template method. If a project is similar to a past project, the cost from the past project can be used as a starting point for the new project. An example of this would be a collision shop which consults published labor rates and labor time to perform a collision repair. The project of repairing an auto includes similar tasks, so using time and cost numbers from previous repairs is a good place for the collision shop to start in preparing an estimate. The template method enables the performing organization to develop a potential schedule, estimate costs, and develop a budget within a short time frame. The parametric procedure applied to specific tasks is another method of the bottom-up approach for estimating. We talked about the ratio or parametric method for preparing top-down estimates. In the bottom-up approach, the same method is applied only at the work package task level rather than a whole project level. So instead of looking at the size of the house as we did in the ratio method, we look at the size of a room. If wallpaper costs $5 per square foot plus $2 per square foot for installation, you could figure out the cost by multiplying the size of the room in square feet by $7. The range estimating method works best when work packages have significant uncertainty around the time and cost to complete it. If the work package is routine and carries little uncertainty, using a person familiar with the work package is usually the best approach. They know from experience or know where to find the information to estimate the time and cost. So, how does range estimating work? By gathering a group together and asking them to determine the low, average, and high cost and durations for the activities. This should be done for the factors influencing the activity, such as complexity, technology, newness, and familiarity. Involving others in making activity estimates gains buy-in and credibility to the estimate. Here's an example of range estimating. It looks at 3 time estimates for work packages developed by a cross-functional group of project stakeholders. It shows the group's estimates for low, average, and high for each work package. The risk level column is the group's independent assessment. In a sense, this number represents the group's evaluation of many factors, like complexity and technology, that might impact the average time estimate. The hybrid, or phase estimating approach, begins with a top-down estimate for the project and then refines estimates for phases of the project as it is implemented. This approach is used when an unusual amount of uncertainty surrounds a project and it is impractical to estimate times and costs for the entire project. Phase estimating uses a 2-estimate system over the life of the project. A detailed estimate is developed for the immediate phase and a macro or top-down estimate is made for the remaining phases of the project. Here's an example of what the phase estimate looks like over the product lifecycle. The phases are listed on the left with the activity listed across the top. Phase 1 consists of a macro or top-down approach covering all activities. In Phase 2, a detailed estimate is determined for the activity, while an updated macro estimate is completed for the remaining activities in the project. This continues until the last phase of the project, where there is only one activity left. That one activity is estimated in detail. This slide provides a summary of the differences between top-down, or macro estimates, and bottom-up, or micro estimates. The level of detail contained in an estimate will be different for different levels of management. Top management may be most interested in the total project along with major project milestones. Middle managers may want one segment of the project or a limited number of milestones as they relate to their area of the organization. First line or function managers may only be interested in the individual work package tasks that must be completed in their area. The beauty of the work breakdown structure is the ability to aggregate information so that each level of management can obtain the kind of information they want and need in order to make decisions. The detail within the work breakdown structure will differ based on the complexity of the project. As the project manager, there are some items you want to keep in mind regarding detail. First, excessive detail is expensive. It creates unnecessary paperwork and focuses on departmental outcomes rather than the teamwork required across all departments. Second, insufficient detail is costly. It generates a lack of focus on the project goals and commits a wasted effort on non-essential activities. Thus far, we've been discussing cost estimation, but we haven't broken this down. There are several types of costs for a project. There are direct costs, direct project overhead costs, and general and administrative overhead costs. Direct costs are clearly chargeable to a specific work package. These would include the labor costs of team members, materials, supplies, and equipment for the project, travel necessary to perform project work, etc. Direct project overhead costs are directly tied to an identifiable project deliverable or work package. This would include rent, supplies, and specialized machinery. Using certain direct overhead costs provides a more accurate project cost rather than using a blanket overhead rate for the entire project. General and administrative overhead costs represent costs not directly linked to the project, but are carried for the duration of the project. These include organization costs across all products and projects, such as advertising, accounting, and management above the project level. A specific percentage of these costs are allocated to the project. There are several reasons why you might adjust your estimates. Interaction costs are hidden in estimates. Remember, tasks are to be estimated independently from other tasks. However, work on one task may have a dependency on one or more prior tasks. The handoff between tasks requires time and attention. Another reason may be that normal conditions do not apply. Earlier we stated that estimates are supposed to be based on normal conditions as a good starting point, but it is rarely realistic in real life. Resource availability, whether people, equipment, materials, or even funding, can easily extend original estimates. Sometimes, things just go wrong on projects. Design flaws show up after the fact, weather conditions occur, accidents happen, staff turns over, staff gets sick. All of these affect estimates and may be causes for adjusting them. Changes in project scope and changes in plans may cause you to adjust your estimate. As the project proceeds, a much better understanding of what needs to be done may lead to major changes in project plan and costs. Projects in midstream may have to be modified due to new demands by the customer and/or competition. As the project takes shape and adjustments are necessary, time and cost estimates of specific activities are adjusted as the risks, resources, and situation become more clearly defined. The best way to improve the accuracy of estimates is to collect and archive data from previous projects, both estimates and actuals. This approach allows the project estimator to select a specific work package done in the past and glean information for estimating the current project. Over time, historical data and the degree of accuracy in the database should improve. The image on this slide represents the structure of a database similar to those you might find being used within organizations. The different departments will add their project estimates, allowing the other departments access in hopes of creating a more accurate estimate. This chapter contained a lot of material and key terms. We discussed the importance of creating an estimate, the factors influencing the quality of the estimates, guidelines for estimating, top-down and bottom-up estimating approaches, the level of detail and cost involved in estimating, and reasons you might need to adjust an estimate. Please be sure to review your book terms and the homework assignment for additional practice in using the terms. Next week, we'll turn our attention to developing a project plan. We'll look at terminology and processes used in developing a project plan. Again, please head over to this week's discussion on Blackboard. You'll find the discussions under Week 4 discussion. If you have any questions or concerns or would like clarification or to talk through any aspect discussed, please do not hesitate to contact me via phone or email. Thank you.